When you think of Lamborghini, you think of bold designs and roaring engines. But the Miura? It's a car that redefined what a supercar could be. With a 430 horsepower V12 engine mounted sideways in the back, the Miura wasn't just fast, it was revolutionary. This beast could hit 60 miles an hour in just 5 seconds and cruise past 170 miles per hour, all while turning heads with its sleek, low-slung body. But behind that speed and style lies a wild story. Ferruccio Lamborghini, a self-made tractor magnate, wasn't trying to build race cars. He wanted to beat Ferrari at their own game by creating the ultimate road car. And he did, with a machine that was rebellious, refined, and light years ahead of its time. In 1967, only about a dozen Miuras made it to the US, each costing more than $20,000, a small fortune back then. But how did this iconic car, known as the world's first supercar, come to life? How did Ferruccio's vision turn into a machine that changed automotive history forever? Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications before we deep dive into the hidden story behind Lamborghini's Miura. And you don't want to miss what comes next. The story starts with Lamborghini's design team, led by a young genius named Gianpaolo Dallara. By the summer of 1965, Dallara and his crew had sketched out the entire chassis for what would become the Miura. They made a bold choice, mounting the massive V12 engine designed by Giotto Bizzarini transversely in the rear. This wasn't just for show, it was the best way to fit all that power into the back of a sleek, compact sports car. This was groundbreaking stuff at the time, and it set the Miura apart from everything else on the road. In October of that same year, Lamborghini released photos of the engine and gearbox. Then, in November 1965, they unveiled the naked chassis at the Turin Salon. No fancy paint job, just the raw mechanics. But even in this bare-bones state, the Miura captivated car lovers. The engineering was so exotic and compelling that Lamborghini received 10 orders for the car, despite its sky-high projected price. But the Miura wasn't quite ready for the road just yet. The production chassis underwent several changes from that very first showpiece. The wheelbase was stretched from 96.9 inches to 98.4 inches, giving the car better balance and handling. The radiator, originally mounted horizontally, was repositioned in a more conventional vertical setup. Lamborghini also moved the battery from the central frame tunnel to the front compartment. This improved the car's weight distribution, balancing it at 44.5% in the front and 55.5% in the rear when the gas tank was full. Even small changes like pivoting the accelerator from the floor instead of suspending it were made to refine the driving experience. Of course, a car this revolutionary needed a body to match. More than one designer wanted the honor, but the job went to Nuccio Bertoni, one of the most creative minds in automotive design. The collaboration between Bertoni and Lamborghini's team was seamless, blending the Miura's mechanical genius with stunning aesthetics. The result was a car that looked as good as it performed. The body was first shown at the Geneva Motor Sports Show in March 1966, and by May, the Miura was already undergoing its first road tests. By the time the Miura made its near-final appearance at the Paris Salon later that year, the buzz was undeniable. Lamborghini originally planned to build 50 Miuras in 1967, but the overwhelming enthusiasm at the fall shows, that changed all that. They doubled production to 100 cars, and that was on top of the 250 front-engine models Lamborghini was already producing. The Miura, it wasn't just a flashy concept anymore, it was the future of supercars. Now, let's talk about what made the Miura tick. At the heart of this beast was a 60-degree V12 engine with a deep-sided aluminium block and wet cylinder liners. It had a bore and stroke of 82 by 62 millimeters, giving it a total displacement of 3,929 cc. This over-square design allowed the engine to rev higher and produce more power, compared to Ferrari's 4-liter V12, which measured 77 by 71 millimeters. Lamborghini's engine was designed to push limits. The Miura's engine featured 4 chain-driven overhead cams operating valves through cup-type tappets. For the US market, all Miuras were equipped with a sprint-tuned engine setup, delivering a wild cam timing of 308 degrees for the intake, 280 degrees for the exhaust, and a whopping 90 degrees of overlap. The compression ratio, that was bumped up to 10.2 to 1, compared to the more standard 9.8 to 1. The engine came alive at 4,500 RPM, and it hit peak torque at 5,900 RPM, and topped out at 430 horsepower at 8,000 RPM. Fuel delivery came from 4 triple-barrel downdraft Weber carburetors, the same 46 IDA 3C models used in the Porsche 911. These carbs were tucked neatly under a long air cleaner and silencer. Despite the engine's compact placement, Lamborghini managed to fit an effective exhaust system, with headers feeding into a transverse muffler and 2 short tailpipes peeking out the back. Cooling was yet another area where the Miura excelled. A wide crossflow radiator sat up front, cooled by 2 big Lucas plastic-bladed fans that the driver could switch on when needed. The lubrication system was a straightforward wet sump setup, and though there was talk of a dry sump system for the high-revving V12, it wasn't necessary for the road-going Miura. The transmission, too, was just as advanced. Housed in an aluminium casing along the back of the engine, it used helical gearing and Porsche-style synchro mesh for all 5 forward gears and reverse. A small pinion and a large helical ring gear transferred power to the limited slip differential, which then sent it to the rear wheels via splined half shafts. Early Miura prototypes featured a complex triple-plate clutch mounted on the left side of the car, driven directly from the crankshaft. But for production models, Lamborghini simplified things. They switched to a single-plate clutch mounted at the end of the crankshaft, driving the gearbox input through a pair of helical gears. This layout was more efficient and reliable, similar to what BMC used in the Mini. Even the alternator was relocated, now sitting at the right end of the engine, driven by a toothed rubber belt instead of gears. The Miura's suspension system was equally as impressive. It borrowed heavily from Lamborghini's front-engined cars, using coil springs concentric with Armstrong shock absorbers at all 4 corners. The wishbones were steel pressings, with the lower ones boxed for added strength. At the front, the suspension was conventional, but in the rear, the bottom wishbones were reversed, a design inspired by Formula 1 cars to handle the drive thrust. Anti-roll bars at both ends, 3/4 inch up front and 5/8 of an inch in the rear, helped keep the car stable during high-speed cornering. Steering came from a rack and pinion setup mounted at the front suspension, with a tubular damper to absorb road shock. Braking was handled by Girling dual-circuit disc brakes with 12-inch rotors. There was no power assistance, but the carefully selected brake linings provided a strong, reliable bite without fading under pressure. Then there were the tires. Pirelli Cinturato HS size 205 VR15. These high-speed tires were rated for continuous speeds up to 165 miles per hour and could handle bursts of even higher speeds. Their thin tread wasn't great for longevity, but on a car like the Miura, performance mattered more than durability. When you slid into the Miura's cockpit, you were met with a blend of luxury and performance that few cars could match. The Jaeger speedometer and 10,000 RPM tachometer were housed in large round gauges, placed just a little low for perfect legibility, but still commanding your attention. In the center panel, 6 additional dials, including a clock, angled toward the driver, giving you full control over the car's vitals. Below them, 9 indicator lights, each a different color, flashed warnings and updates, making sure you knew exactly what was happening under the hood. But one of the coolest features? The switch panel mounted on the roof, Avanti style, just above the rear view mirror. 6 switches controlled everything, from the headlights and fog lights to the dash lights and radiator fans. It was sleek and futuristic, though in true Lamborghini fashion, they didn't bother labeling the switches. You had to learn your Miura inside and out. Between the Geneva and Paris shows in 1966, Bertoni focused on making the Miura's cabin even better. Ventilation and soundproofing, they both became top priorities. Air flowed in under pressure from either the fans or the natural ram effect, traveling through the central tunnels to outlets near your feet and high between the seats. You could adjust these vents for both direction and volume, giving you complete control over your comfort. Want heat? Just turn a tap under the dash to let the hot water into the heater core. Simple, effective. Bertoni experimented with different ways to let air escape from the cockpit. The final solution? Vents across the back of the roof, similar to those on the Ford GT. A simple slide valve inside the car opened or closed them, and they worked beautifully, even on the hottest days. Combined with full opening side windows, the Miura stayed cool and comfortable. though you'd usually crack the windows just an inch or two at low speeds. To tackle heat and noise from the engine, special rubber insulation was added to the firewall. The result? It was never more than slightly warm to the touch, even with that roaring V12 inches behind your head. For the rear window, Bertoni initially tried double-walled glass filled with gas, but production models got something even better: double-thick plexiglass called Visarm, which was lightweight and highly effective. Inside, the Miura had thoughtful touches everywhere. Triple defroster outlets kept the wide windshield clear, and the passenger had a multi-position footrest, 2 grab rails, and a package shelf. The interior hardware, like the recessed door latches and ashtray, they were painted black, but after some use, it did start to look a little worn. Lamborghini planned to switch to black chrome in future models just to keep things looking a little fresher. Starting the Miura was a thrill in itself. A couple of pumps on the throttle primed the water carburetors, and the engine fired up almost instantly, settling into a smooth, low growl. The throttle response was sharp. Once you got past the slight slack in the cable, the V12 leapt to life with breathtaking quickness. Despite the engine's proximity to the cabin, very little noise intruded. Instead, you got a perfect blend of mechanical symphony: the whir of cam chains, the hum of drive gears, and the soft rumble of Pirelli tires gripping the road. Even at full throttle, you could carry on a conversation, though the roar of the exhaust was always there, reminding you of the power at your fingertips. Driving the Miura was an experience unlike any other. The gearbox, though stiff at first, loosened up with use. Shifting required a firm hand, but the ratios were perfectly spaced. First gear gave you a smooth launch, and as you climbed through the gears, the Miura revealed its true nature. The clutch pedal felt slightly dead, but it was light and easy to use, engaging smoothly every time. When you pushed the Miura hard, it responded with breathtaking performance. Racing starts delivered vivid acceleration with no wheel spin, unless you of course forced it. Tests in Switzerland with the lower performance 350 horsepower engine clocked 0 to 60 miles per hour in 5 seconds and 0 to 100 in 11.7 seconds, and finally 0 to 150 in 32.5 seconds. But with the 430 horsepower engine, the Miura felt even stronger, especially above 100 miles per hour. You could hit 125 miles per hour in just third gear, 145 in fourth, and still have more to give in fifth. But it wasn't just about speed. The Miura's engine was incredibly smooth and flexible too. You could cruise in top gear at 1000 RPM without a single hint of bucking, and full throttle at 2000 RPM sent you flying. At 60 miles per hour, you could pick any of the top 4 gears and the car just wouldn't care. It was as happy crawling through city traffic as it was blasting down an open highway. The steering was light and precise, offering just the right amount of road feedback. At low speeds, the 3.75 turns lock-to-lock felt a little bit slow, requiring some hand-over-hand movements for tighter corners. But once you hit 120 miles per hour, you appreciate the stability. Anything quicker would have made the car too twitchy at high speeds. The Miura felt planted and secure, thanks to its low center of gravity, perfect weight distribution, and those grippy Pirelli Cinturato tires. Cornering in the Miura was pure joy. It hugged the road with unwavering grip, eager to drive into turns with total confidence. Whether you were accelerating, braking, or coasting through a corner, the Miura stayed composed and responsive. The Girling brakes were up to the task, bringing the car to a smooth controlled stop every time. Around town, they could squeal a bit, but on the open road, they were flawless. Visibility was excellent thanks to the sharply raked windshield and slim pillars. Even without side mirrors, rear visibility through the deck louvers was surprisingly good, and when you opened the throttle on a clear stretch of road, the Miura felt unstoppable. Hitting 155 miles per hour on a normal expressway wasn't just possible, it felt effortless. And the best part, we weren't even in 5th gear yet. The Miura wasn't just Lamborghini's masterpiece, it was the car that started the supercar revolution. So, what's next? Which car should we dive into for our next video? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a deep dive into automotive history.